What is up, you guys? Jury here, and welcome back to a new video. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can optimize Wuthering Waves, Genshin Impact, and Zenless Zone Zero on Linux. If you're playing gacha games on Linux and performance suddenly got worse after an update, well, you're not alone. I have been playing Wuthering Waves recently, and I noticed after some updates, the game was so poorly optimized that I couldn't run the game smoothly anymore. It felt like I was playing a game that was so heavy on my system, if that makes sense. And of course, this applies to Genshin Impact and Zenless Zone Zero, or any other gacha game that you are playing. So that is why I decided to make this video. I'm going to show you how I realistically optimize these games on Linux, what actually helps, what doesn't, and why some games are just more fragile than others. So, without wasting your time, alright, so before I start, I'm going to show you my specs in case if you're curious of what kind of hardware I'm running on my system. So the first thing that I'm going to show you is Go Overlay. And the reason why I'm showing you Go Overlay is actually quite simple. If you go to the Performance tab, we can actually set an FPS limit for, well, whatever game or application you're running. So for Wuthering Waves, I set this to 60 simply because I prefer to run the game at 60. And yes, I am aware that Wuthering Waves has frame generation. I am aware that it has super resolution and AMD FSR3 supported. Frame generation really does not work well on my system, so for that reason I just decided to cap the game at 60 and not cap it at a higher refresh rate. Just a brief explanation as to why I kept the game at 60. But yeah, now I'm going to open Steam and I'm going to right click on this and go to properties, and these are my launch options. For this launch option, what this basically does is it makes sure that when I launch Wuthering Waves, it uses my discrete graphics card. So if I open my terminal, as you can see, I have my discrete card and I have my integrated graphics card. Now I bought a new motherboard recently, and I don't know what like my Kashi OS distro did. I guess like it detected both my discrete graphics card and my integrated graphics card as just GPUs, or as like dual GPUs. So for this reason, I have set this to only my discrete graphics card so that when I launch Wuthering Waves, it actually runs using my graphics card and not my integrated graphics card. So that's the only reason why I have this in my launch options. Now you don't need to use this if you don't have dual GPUs, or if you don't have like an integrated graphics card. Game mode run basically keeps the CPU in performance mode. It reduces schedule latency and sets the CPU governor to performance mode. And this launch option is extremely useful for CPU heavy games like Wuthering Waves. It won't double FPS, but it does stabilize frame times on Ryzen APUs or mid-range CPUs like mine. And last but not least, I have Mangohud enabled for Wuthering Waves. So when I launch the game, it's going to cap that game at 60 frames basically. So that's why I have this. Another thing to keep in mind is the GE Proton build that you're going to use. As you can see, I'm using GE Proton 10-8. This is the same build that I'm still using ever since I made this video. So yes, when I made my WuWa video on how to run it using Linux, this is basically the same build that I'm using up to this day. Now the reason why I haven't changed up to a newer build is because constantly changing Proton versions can actually force shader recompilation and can reintroduce stutters. And for a game like Wuthering Waves, where it recompiles shaders very aggressively because it's using a DirectX 12 API, that's a big deal. So this is why I am just sticking to only this build, simply because I do not want to switch to a newer build and then experience stutters because of the fact that I have to recompile shaders for the game not to stutter again. So yes, GE builds or like Proton builds can fix regressions faster, but stability comes from just staying on a known good version, not like constantly updating. So the practical rule of thumb is this: update Proton if Wuthering Waves stops working. Freeze Proton when it works. And with that being said, that is pretty much it. So now I'm going to launch the game and show you my in-game settings and show you a little bit of gameplay. So I'm going to launch the game. And as you can see, we have game mode on and we have VK-T3D capped at 60 frames per second. So this tells us that the settings that I enabled and the large options that I enabled are working properly. Now obviously each time it patches something, I have to exit the game and I have to relaunch the game. So this happens quite a lot, but that's not a big deal. I'm going to launch the game again. So now we're in game and I'm going to hop in and show you the in-game settings that I use. And here are the settings that I use. Now I think it would be pointless if I go one by one, but I am going to show you the most important settings that I turned off, or the ones that I changed. So for the frame rate, I have this at 60. For VSync, I have this off simply because I am using Go Overlay and I'm using VSync. So there's no need for me to use an additional VSync for this. These settings, I have them at medium, but for the most part, I have most of these turned off except for anti-aliasing. These settings are turned off or at low. As you can see, most of these settings do not affect performance, but I just prefer to have them disabled. Now if you scroll down to the advanced section, I have AMD FSR3 enabled, super resolution at balanced, and frame generation at disabled. Now the reason why I have this disabled is, well, actually quite simple. This works, but when I play the game and Mangohud is telling me that the game is running at 90 to 100 frames, the game doesn't feel that I'm running at that frame rate. It often feels like I'm running the game at 40 frames per second. So this might have to do with how the game is optimized for my hardware, because I am running in 6500 XT. Maybe it doesn't properly support frame generation for this game. There could be other issues, but I don't know. So for that reason, I just prefer to have this disabled because it doesn't do anything for me. But for you specifically, the viewers watching, if you have a really good graphics card, I recommend you enable this. Just keep in mind that you're gonna have to adjust Mangohud so that you can play this game at a higher refresh rate. So instead of capping it at 60, cap it at, let's say, 90 or 120 frames, depending on like the maximum frame rates you can get for this game. But these are the settings I use, and when I play the game, it just feels smooth.
Who's the prey now? All is fair in war. Saw that coming. It's time.
One with the sounds.
Target confirmed. Unleash the fans. All is fair in war.
Swift and resolute. One with the sounds.
So as you can see in domains, the game is very smooth, capped at 60. no micro stutters. Yeah. So domains are places where I just feel more comfortable.
It's morphin' time. Time for some hot action.
But I would say that's pretty much it. Alright, so for Genshin Impact, I'm going to be using Heroic Games Launcher. There aren't a lot of settings that we are going to enable, but for the in-game settings, there are some in-game settings that I am going to adjust or like disable, simply because this game has been a little bit stuttery after some updates. So for this, I'm going to show you what I would do if I want to run this game smoothly. For the wine section, I enabled eSync. This reduces the wine server overhead, and I also enabled FSync, which basically reduces the wine server overhead in CPU intensive games. These are no brainer. I have to enable these so that I can get some performance and have less CPU overhead in general. This is an experimental feature, and it basically allows you to run most games under Wayland protocol, which doesn't actually improve performance from my experience, and enabling this for you may vary. You might get worse performance or you might not notice a difference, but for this I have it enabled simply because it works best for me. And for HDR, I enable this actually, but this is something you do not have to enable simply because it doesn't improve performance. It just improves visuality but not performance. For the other section, these are only two options, or like, yeah, these are like two options that I enable. The rest of these I'm gonna leave them at default because they really don't do much. Now if you go to the advanced section, if I scroll down in here, you may notice that I have an environment variable, and that is DXVK underscore async. Because Genshin uses DirectX 11, DXVK async can reduce shader stutter on some systems. It does not increase FPS. It's optional, and it may stop working after updates. So basically, I recommend you try this as an experiment. If you notice that this environment variable does nothing for you, especially if you notice shader stutters for a while, then there's no need for you to use this because it is optional. But if you notice that this does help you to reduce a lot of the shader stutters, then I recommend you keep this. And also to keep in mind, for this environment variable to work, bear in mind that you're going to have to use a Proton build that actually supports this environment variable, otherwise it's not going to work. But in general, Genshin is fairly well optimized in my opinion. With minimum settings, you can play this game at 60 frames per second. So I'm going to launch the Hoyo Play Launcher, and I'm going to launch the game. So as you can see, the Hoyo Play Launcher is working just fine. We have Mangohud in here, and game mode is already enabled. So we are going to start the game. Okay, so I logged into my account, and this might take a while, so I'm going to skip this. Alright, that took a little bit longer, but yeah, we're going to hop in game and adjust some of the settings that I use. So okay, I'm gonna go in settings, graphics, and I'm going to adjust some of the settings to get some performance. So I'm going to disable VSync because I do not need it. Global illumination, I'm gonna set it to off actually. Visual effects, keep it medium. Environmental detail, set it to low. Fog on, efficient motion perform off. Low density. Resolution. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it in here. I only reduced the anisotropic filtering to 2 times, but the rest of these settings I would keep them as they are. So I'm going to do a very
If you press a
quick
leaf.
gameplay of this.
I'm used to the rain, but you should probably... Easy now, Kakuku.
Let me weave you a web. Midnight Phantasmagoria! Then support...
Come here, you little rascal. Here.
Shadow Raven, let night fall!
No rest.
Way ahead!
I'm so used to like dodging mechanics in WuWa, so damn. That's not a big deal.
Let's spark things up. Surge.
Oh, that was a basic. Okay, never mind. That was just a basic tutorial. But as you can see, domains as usual are not that demanding when playing game.
With one heart, we pray. You poor... Cleanup sequence initiated. Annihilation mode. Absorption test.
For the everlasting forest.
Animal hypostasis and
Ultimatum protocol.
Unions converge.
Insulation chamber deployed.
Swirl, Mark II.
By the frost moon of old.
Preparing for dust up. A new moon rises.
Not bad. Alright, with that being said, that's pretty much it. Now, of course, I cannot forget Zenless Zone Zero, but I think it would be redundant if I show you the exact same thing, like showing you the in-game settings. So instead, what I am going to show you is the settings that I'm using. So I'm using GE Proton 10-8, and these are the settings that I'm using. Now, I disabled Wine Wayland because the game would not work, as in the game would not launch. But after disabling this, the game works properly. For the other section, I am using these settings very similar to Genshin Impact, and I only have the same environment variable that I am using for Genshin Impact, but the rest is almost the same. Alright, so I'm in game. I had a little bit of some technical issues where when I start the game, it would show me a black screen. So what I basically did was, after like switching Proton builds and experiencing the same symptom where I would get a black screen, I just deleted the whole prefix folder of the game, and then I selected an older build, which is GE Proton 9-26. So that's what I'm using to run this game. As you can see, it's working. So now what it's going to do is it's going to download the resources, because I did download, or like I did update this game, which took about like 30 minutes to an hour. So now it's going to download everything. Then once we do, we get in game, and I'm going to show you the settings I use, and yeah, that will be pretty much it. I almost forgot one thing actually. Hold on. Now, because this game allows me to play at a higher refresh rate, I am going to cap this at 165 instead of 60 frames. Something I actually forgot. So now the game is running at a higher refresh rate. I really can't tell it like which maximum FPS it's running, but it is running at a higher refresh rate. So yes, as you can see, I haven't played this game for months, so I'm getting gifts. Of course, it wants me to wish for this character, and I was right. Yeah, but as you can see, the game is running at a fairly high refresh rate. I think the highest was 93 frames per second. So let me just walk around briefly. Now, like I said, I had to delete my YN prefix folder, so the game is gonna fluctuate a little bit, but this isn't a big deal. With time, like the more I play this game, the smoother it's gonna feel. So now let me go in settings and show you the settings I use. So my display mode is at a 1080p resolution, so I'm running this in full screen. My FPS is set to unlimited. Vertical sync, I'm going to disable this because I have an additional VSync for Mangohud, so there's no need for me to use this. Rendering, I keep it at this. I think it's balanced, so I don't get poor quality, but at the same time I don't want to put a lot of text on my system, so 1.0 is fairly balanced. Anti-aliasing is at this option. Global illumination is set to high. Shadows high. This is sound quality is set to medium. Shading quality is set to medium. Character quality is set to medium. But most of these settings are set to medium, and that is pretty much it. And of course, I'm gonna have to claim these. I haven't played the game in a while. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if this video helped you get smoother gameplay, or in general if it helped you get some performance on Linux. If it did, write them down in the comments. And if you guys have any useful tips, if you guys have any useful variables that might help, write them down in the comments, because that would help other users as well who are struggling to run these games on Linux. Each time these games get an update, they become very difficult or almost impossible to run. So yeah, it would be very helpful if you guys can write all of those down in the comments. With that being said, it's your boy Jury, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care and happy Linuxing.